What's up, everyone? Welcome into a very special edition of Boxing Scene Today, ahead of the big fight with Lester Martinez versus Emmanuel Aleem here in San Bernardino, California, for the interim world title and the WBC title. I am joined today by, as always, by Paulie the Magic Man Malignaggi, but also we got some special guests. We got Robert Garcia and Stephen Breadman Edwards to give their thoughts ahead of the big showdown come tomorrow night. Yeah, guys, we had the press conference. We had a great turnout a few days ago. We had the media workout. Everybody's looking sharp and really fit. What are our thoughts as we're approaching fight night?
Coach, you want to go first? The workout was at your gym.
Yeah, Robert, you start us out. We were at your beautiful gym in Riverside. Really phenomenal gym. First time I was there. If you're ever in the area, guys, you should check it out. But Robert, what are you thinking so far leading up to fight night?
I think both fighters look good. Aleem is confident. He trained good. He looked really good, sharp, fast, healthy. And so did Lester. Lester is a dedicated fighter. He has the whole country behind him, so he knows the responsibility that he has. He doesn't seem pressured to perform. I think he's confident. He's relaxed. He's got a great team behind him. So man, can't wait, man. This is the fight that everybody should be looking forward to, because the future for either one, whoever wins, is going to be unbelievable. Look, more likely we're going to have Canelo fighting for the WBC title against
Billy.
Billy. There you go, Billy, and the winner could fight the winner of tomorrow night. So it's going to be unbelievable, man. This is a fight that everybody should be tuning into, because it's going to be full of action. But the most important thing is the future. The next fight after that, fighting in Billy or Canelo is unbelievable.
Yeah, Coach, yeah, Brett, you weren't with us, Brett, for the press conference or the workout. But I always feel like as we get closer to a fight, we've been talking about it for weeks, but your mindset kind of hones in once we get really close. What are your thoughts as we're approaching fight night?
I'm really happy for Aleem that he's getting a chance, because he's been a guy who has to take some tough, middle of the road kind of hardcore fights. I was there when he got his I think he had a draw against Makhmudov.
Yeah.
So I actually watched that fight, and Karabarov is really good. If you watch his fight with Charlo, there's a good chance that he won that fight.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that Aleem is getting his chance. And I think really highly of Lester Martinez. I think Lester Martinez got screwed a little bit against Mbili. Not so much on the draw, because it was a very close fight, but that fight should have been a 12-rounder. Nobody I've never seen that before, a 10-round fight of that. It's like it was a title fight or eliminator or whatever it was, but it was a 10-round fight. Yeah. And as I'm watching that fight, I'm saying to myself, it might be even in terms of points, because Mbili is such a busy guy. It's really hard to outpoint him. But I was thinking to myself that Lester Martinez was going to clip him down the stretch. And and Billy's a little bit more fast twitch, so Martinez needs the later round. So I thought he got I'm not going to say screwed, but I thought he got the short end of the stick. That fight shouldn't have been a 10 round. And I thought Martinez was coming on and it was going to clip him late. So I'm really high on Martinez. I think if you're asking me to pick, I think Martinez is going to win the fight. I think it's going to be a violent fight. Aleem doesn't run. He kind of like has the James Toney style. He sits in the box and he sits in the shoulder roll and he looks to counter you. He's not going to run all around the ring from nobody. But I think Martinez is a little too big, little too young, little too natural at 168. And I noticed something about Aleem. Aleem sits in the shoulder roll, and Martinez has a really good sneaky overhand right. And I think he'll be able to come down and loop it over the side of his ear and get that shot through. I think that'll be the key punch of the fight.
Yeah, you know what? It's the calm before the storm at this point. It's both guys sort of look trim and ready. Both guys were smiling at the weigh-in and at the press conference. The hard work is behind you when you're on fight week. It's just now it's time to perform and execute the plan and execute all the things you've been working on, and you kind of get that energy from both guys. They kind of have that mental focus on them. Brad, yeah, with the Mbili fight, I was talking about that yesterday. With Lester being a 10-rounder. Dana White tried to sneak in his guy Callum Walsh into the co-main event and think that nobody was going to notice, and maybe nobody would have noticed had the result not hinged on the last 2 rounds becoming so important in the Lester Martinez fight. But it ends up being that the last 2 rounds wound up being needed in the Lester Martinez and Mbili fight, so therefore it became a talking point that this shoemaker, Dana White, decided to put his guy, who's basically, still a prospect, in the co-main event because he wanted to give him more exposure. By the way, made him look even worse because Callum Walsh didn't even look good at all. Didn't impress anybody in that co-main event spot. But yeah, we wound up having to sort of leave our mouths open with Lester and Mbili because we didn't get the last 2 rounds that would have closed that show and would have really given a chance for most likely Lester to pull away and get the win, or even get a big stoppage late. That was WBC's fight of the year. 2 more rounds of that kind of action would have given us closure and maybe would have cemented a fight of the year even more in everybody's mind. Instead, like I said, this is what happens when you let a subpar guy take charge and make these kind of decisions. I don't even know where you go and get, no matter how much you like your prospect, you don't put him in the co-main event of that, in that kind of situation, over a title eliminator like that. And like I said, on top of that, he made his own guy look bad because Callum looked terrible in the co-main event. As far as
about somebody coming in and calling shots like that, but that kind of looks bad for the commission too. Why would they even allow that, man?
Of course, the commission allowing it too.
Because that fight should have been a 12-round fight, and those last 2 rounds would have made a big difference.
And coach, the reason it had to be demoted to a 10-round fight is because now it was no longer the co-main event. You can't have the co-main event being a 10-rounder and the fight before the co-main event being a 12-rounder. So by demoting it before the co-main event, now they had to make it a 10-rounder because Callum was not going to fight a 12-rounder. If Callum would have been a 12-rounder with Vargas, then you could have done the Mbili and Lester fight also a 12-rounder and still put it before. But you actually demoted the Lester versus Mbili fight as a co-main event.
You did.
And demoted it to a 10-rounder because obviously Callum is a 10-rounder. Now you have no choice but to make both of them a 10-rounder. It comes down to a lot of guys, honestly, because starts out with Dana White making that decision and the egg on his face, not just because you got the result where it matters. Because honestly, if you would, that fight ends in a knockout for Lester or for Mbili, nobody's talking about the fact that it was 10 or 12 and Dana would have skated through. But the fact that you wound up needing the 2 rounds made it all the more important. So now he winds up with the egg on his face. He winds up with a double egg on his face because Callum looked like shit in the fight too. So on top of it, he puts his guy in the co-main event spot thinking like, I'm going to give him this big opportunity and screw over Lester and Mbili. And then instead you screw over everybody because even Callum ended up looking bad. It was too soon for him to be in that kind of situation and be in that kind of spot. And yeah, it comes down to the commission. It comes down to WBC for still making an eliminator, despite the fact that it was a 10-rounder. It comes down to a whole shit trickles down, shit rolls downhill fast, bro. So once it started going, it picked up steam. But with Aleem and Lester, they physically look good, but Brad, you make a good point. Lester being physically a little bit bigger, but you also made another good point about Lester. Aleem is also a very inconsistent guy. Which version of Aleem are we gonna get? We got the Aleem that drew with Korobov and knocked out Kitrov, but then or you get the Aleem that loses to Ronald Ellis and Hugo Centeno. You know what I mean? Like which Aleem?
You know what, Paulie? Mm-hmm. I couldn't believe he lost to Hugo Centeno like that. Because Hugo Centeno
neither could he. That was a real shock.
Puncher. If you would have asked me, I would have said Aleem's the better fighter. Hugo Centeno was not a big puncher. He's not known for knocking guys out, and he knocks Aleem out cold. I still don't know what happened.
What about that he draws with Korobov, who is a monster, but then loses to Ellis? You know what I mean? Like, again, you don't know, will the real Emmanuel Aleem please stand up? That's what we're looking for on Saturday. We hope that we get the best version of Aleem, the best version of Lester. If you get the best version of Aleem, this is a real shootout. I don't think it lasts long. I think one of you guys mentioned that already. I've been thinking the same. I think it's a short shootout where both guys are going to fire. If the best Aleem shows up, it's a real dynamite shootout. If the subpar Aleem shows up, well, then Lester's going to blow right through him. I mean, it's interesting because we've seen both versions of Aleem.
Well, even if he does show up, Lester still has the opportunity to blow right through him because Lester's just that kind of guy. But I watched both of these guys yesterday a lot. I was during my workout. I rewatched the Mbili Lester fight. Man, was that fight good? I mean, they went to war throughout, and I forgot how kind of slow Lester started out. He really needed that second half of the fight, and he came on great. He made a little bit of distance, used that mid-range jab, and was able to really crack Mbili with uppercuts off both hands all night long. And I'll tell you, I didn't realize this when I watched it live. Mbili took a lot of damage in that fight. He was hurt at the end.
Chris, he was hurting him in a subtle way, but he needed the last part of the fight because Mbili's a little bit more quick twitch, and the quick twitch guys has the advantage early, and the guy with the endurance muscle comes on late, and he needed the. I even hit up Bomac and was like, "Why was that fight a 10-rounder?" My goodness, God! He was just.
I explained it, Brad.
Bomac said it in I believe it was the press conference, or maybe it was one of the interviews we had with him. He goes, you know, we would have stopped him with those 2 extra rounds. He said we would have stopped him 1 more round, and I was like, you know, that's the coach being a coach. But then I watched it again. And Billy was taking a lot of really heavy shots. He wasn't reacting to them the same way he was early on.
Billy didn't want to see Lester again. Billy didn't want to see Lester again. So what I mean,
that's why you got to go back and watch that fight.
All these problems caused why? Because this idiot had to put Callum Walsh in his co-main event, and like I said, then Callum didn't even look good to begin with.
Let's not focus on that portion of it. Let's talk keys of victory for both these guys. Let's start out with Aleem, because you know we all know Aleem very well, but also we've alluded to the fact that he can be hot and cold. And listen, he sometimes is the James Toney guy where he stays in the pocket. But I watched a fight with him with Vidal Jr., Alma Carter, and he moved. He moved really well in the beginning of that fight. He was jabbing excellently.
His identity's so confusing, right?
It's very confusing. He's a hard guy to study and analyze because he can do so many different things. He's a very varied approach depending on who's in front of him. So, Brett, let me start with you. What do you think are the keys to victory for Emmanuel Aleem to get the victory?
You know what? I'm going to touch on something real fast. We talk about Aleem and how he's hard to figure out. And Nazem Richardson, when I first started training fighters, he told me something that always stuck with me. And he said, sometimes when a guy can do too many things, you lose your identity. And when you go to put your hand in that bag and you're looking for your weapon of choice, sometimes you get confused because you're looking for a shotgun, a Uzi, or a grenade launcher. He says sometimes the one-dimensional guy, the guy who knows exactly what he wants to do when he wants to do it, sometimes it's easier to be that guy. And I was a young trainer at the time, and I really didn't understand it. But as time went on, I would get a guy, he was a good all-around guy, and we would have to decide what style he has to fight on that night. And that's why I think that Lester has an advantage over Aleem, because Aleem can fight in the pocket, he can move, he can box, he's dealing with a bigger guy. He's going to have some decision anxiety of not only what to do, but when to do it. Where Lester is a puncher, he's the bigger guy. We know he's going to try to come downhill, land an overhand right. And I just feel like that Lester, with him having a height advantage, he gets to punch down on Aleem's shoulder roll. It's a little bit different when you had a height advantage. And I think he's going to be able to come down and hit Aleem with a lot of overhand rights on the side of his head. I think he's a little strong. I think Aleem is going to have to defend that punch, and he's going to have to punch in between Lester. And he's going to have to be very durable. He's going to take some big shots to win this fight. It's not an impossible task, but I just think that Lester has a little bit too much for him right now at this stage of their careers.
Leave it to Nazem Richardson to have a gem like that. That's such a great point, Brad. Thanks for bringing that up. Robert, what's your take? What do you think Aleem needs to do to be victorious?
No, great point. What we just heard right now, that's unbelievable, and I believe everything's correct. I think Aleem with being able to do different styles in different ways could benefit him against certain opponents. But somebody like Lester, who is the aggressor, the puncher, the fighter that has a confidence, that has everybody behind him and a great team and everything. I think Lester's style and we'll figure out anything that Aleem has to bring in. Aleem is still going to be in there for the fight. If we get the Aleem that competes and gives it his best and comes in great shape, then we're gonna have a solid fight. As long as it lasts, it's gonna be a great fight. But I think eventually Lester, breaks him down. Let's not forget body shots. Body shots is gonna be something that Lester, I'm pretty sure Lester's gonna be working on, because it'll slow him down. It'll break him down slowly. I think the fight goes a few rounds, but I think it goes past half of the fight, but eventually Lester breaks him down and knocks him out.
I think Vegas is looking at plus minus on 8.5. So
8.5, okay.
it's actually there's
Yeah,
some money there. So
right.
Vegas agrees with you, Coach. That it's going to go rounds.
I think
Champ,
so.
what are you thinking?
You made a good point about Aleem having the ability to box a little bit. I wonder if that's the part of the bag, as Breadman was discussing, that Nazim was talking about. If that's the part of the bag he's going to be looking to reach into, and if he's going to be able to find it, with the fact that he's got the tools to also stay in the pocket and fight. I think people, we've been talking a lot about the fight is going to be a shootout, and both guys are going to let their bombs go. But if Aleem has this ability to sort of move around the ring, is he going to try to make Lester pick up his feet? And Lester's a bit of a planted guy when he throws those big punches. Maybe make him try to pick up his feet and box off the jab at first before trying to detonate some big shots. Maybe try to take some of the steam out of Lester by frustrating him. I'm curious. I do think, regardless, one of my keys for Aleem is to not abandon the jab. Regardless, I think he's gonna have to, be smart about using his jab and being and using it in the various methods that a jab can be used. I know he has the ability to throw bombs with Lester if he wants to. It's a risk, of course, but Aleem also is dangerous with his the grenades he throws in the pocket and his big shots. But I do think that he does have the athleticism to also box very well and force Lester to sort of come get him. And that would be what makes the fight go rounds, I guess, and if Lester can eventually get to him and get him out of there. But, in the process, if you offset Lester with your jab, you can also set him up for some of your own big punches, and that can make things interesting.
Yeah, I did something yesterday when I was rewatching the fight. I could hear Bomac, and he was saying there was three key things he kept repeating all night long. Number one was step around, because there's a lot of exchanges with Mbili, and Lester has that ability. He can keep a guy turning and let his combinations go because he's got such great balance. The other one was up the middle, and those are the uppercuts, and we saw that in the second half of the fight. Lester couldn't miss an uppercut on Mbili all night because Mbili makes a mistake. He's over his skis. He gets very much over his front foot because he's so aggressive. Lester was hitting him with left and right uppercuts all night long, and the last one was speed. And that you could tell he was just looking for him to let his hands go, throw in combination, win the moment, get some ground back. Because once you got space, you could tell the difference in their skill set. But in terms of what you guys think that Lester needs to do or what he can do, Brad, I know you said you're looking at that overhand right. It looks like you're making an early prediction on calling the shot. But what are you guys thinking for Lester Martinez in order to be victorious and come out of this relatively unscathed, if possible?
I think Lester has to. The Mbili fight was a tough fight. Let's not make it seem like that it was one way. It was a draw for a reason, and he took some punishment also. So I think that Lester has to come out and establish that he's the boss. He has to come out and establish that he is the 68-pounder. He's the puncher. He's the monster. I don't think he can allow Aleem to feel like he belongs. I don't think he can allow Aleem to get confidence, because if he gets confidence, he's not going to be fighting Aleem anymore. He's going to be fighting the twin version of him that's the better fighter. That's what happens in the fight, where a guy starts getting confidence and he starts building and building and building, and next thing you know, you're fighting a monster. I think he has to put Aleem in his place immediately, because Aleem can fight, and he comes from a fighting area down the Washington, D.C. area. It's a lot of good fighters down there. You get a lot of good sparring, and lots of good sparring in the gym. Those guys don't have to fly guys around, because you could call coaches from 6 or 7 gyms and say, hey, man, I need a 68 or a 75-pound. It's a lot of good sparring down there. I get guys from down there to drive up to Philly all the time to spar. So he has to put Aleem in his place early, because if he doesn't, Aleem starts getting confidence. Aleem has a big heart. The next thing you know, you're going to have a competitive fight, and then anything can happen at that point. So if I'm Team Lester, I tell Lester to get a good start and put him in his place very early. Because Lester doesn't start that fast. Lester kind of takes a little time to get his engine warmed up.
You saw that in the Billy fight.
Close. Yep. Even against Joe James, he needed a couple of rounds to get his engine.
He lost that first round. Joe came right at him.
A little bit of time to get his engine warmed up. So he got it. And I'm not saying that that's a big deal, because he hasn't lost the fight. But sometimes little things like that can come back on you. And I believe that he has to be warmed up in the dressing room and really put Aleem in his place early.
How about you, Robert? If you're in the corner of Team Lester Martinez, what are you telling your guy? What do you want to see?
100%. Can't give any rounds away. Can't start off slow. He cannot, try to get a few rounds just to study his one. He can't do that, because that makes Aleem grow in confidence. That's gonna make Aleem grow in just everything. He's going to try to use his jab, and if he lands a few jabs, he's going to continue doing it. Lester can't allow that to happen. Lester needs to warm up very well, and since the first bout, start with that pressure. Start with no respect, no signs of giving his opponent any respect, making him believe that he's got a chance. That's what Lester needs to do. Can't give his opponent the belief that he has a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Champ, you know both these guys really well. I'm sure you've been doing your homework just like I have. What are you seeing that would really aid Lester in getting the victory?
Been cutting off the ring, making the ring small, forcing Aleem to, fight hard early on and making it physical. Lester's a bigger guy. If you force Aleem to, come out of whatever shell he may be in, I don't think he's going to be much of a shell, but he, just in case he's trying to use the ring and box, cut him off try to start a little faster, because we just talked about that he is a little bit of a slow starter. You can always jab with the jabber, use your jab to also close that gap and cut off the ring, and then force it to be the kind of fight that becomes a little bit uncomfortable, and that discomfort can ultimately create more mistakes on the part of Aleem.
Great stuff, guys. Just last thing before we go, real quick, what does a win here do for either guy, and in terms of their future? If you want to start us out there, Brad, what are you thinking?
Well, it changes Aleem's life around. I mean, you talk about a hard luck guy. I think he has 2 or 3 draws, 2 or 3 losses. I mean, it changes his whole life around. He gets a huge, maybe high 6-figure or a low 7-figure fight if he wins this fight. So, I mean, it really just stamps his career. For Lester Martinez, it makes him at least, what would you say, maybe top 2 or 3 guy in the division. It gives him a hold on being the best fighter in the division, because there's no clear-cut best fighter in the division right now. Canelo just lost. He just got a draw with Mbili. There's a couple other guys. So Lester Martinez will have a stake in that, and he will become the interim WBC champion. Then he could force a rematch with Mbili or get the fight with Canelo. So he's 2 fights away from being a superstar. We can win this one and whatever the next one is. So this is big ramifications for both guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Robert,
huge
what do you think?
It's huge for both. Just like Berman's saying, we need they both know the importance of a win. Both their lives will change. Lester is already on his way to becoming the superstar, but this win, they both know that they could get a Canelo fight. They both know they could get a Canelo fight, and I think the WBC, Canelo's team, they all kind of set it up to where and Billy was elevated to the champion, because they know that's probably the easiest one for Canelo to become champion when it comes to Billy and Lester. I think that's why they did it. They know that with Lester, he's gonna have a little more trouble to become world champion. So that's the plan. That's what they did. But now with Lester and Aleem, whoever wins knows that they could possibly get that Canelo fight once Canelo beats Mbili. So man, their lives are going to change, man. This is a very important fight for both of them. I think the division stacked. If it's not Canelo, there's so many big names out there, man. There's we're gonna have May 2nd. We're gonna have the champion, the one WBA champion, Resendiz. Fighting against Munguia. The winner is also big name, huge fights, huge payday. So both guys, whoever wins, that their life changes, and they know their next fight is going to be, I would say, at least 1 million. There can't be any less than that. So man, just can't wait for either one. But obviously Lester is the favorite one, and that's who we're cheering for here locally. So we'll see. But I think their lives are going to change.
Big things on the horizon for the winner. There's For Aleem, it's finally getting over the hump. He's been a guy who's been a hard luck guy. Some of it being his own fault, because like I said, sometimes he just hasn't performed in fights that he should have performed, but also sometimes being a hard luck guy and in getting the right performances, but not getting rewarded for those right performances. So this is an opportunity for him to sort of get that result, maybe the biggest result of his career. He's had some good ones, but this might be the biggest result of his career, and really turn it into a very big positive and a very big offer after this fight. For Leicester, it's just a chance to continue the momentum. There is a lot of momentum with Leicester right now. Big fan base. He's streaking hot right now. He was the one who closed the Mbili fight stronger, so he's also looked at as a dangerous and viable guy. In a 168-pound division with a lot of big names and a lot of dangerous fights and a lot of big fights, I think he positions himself right at the center of it all. I still don't think Canelo or Mbili will want to see him. But, we'll see if that can be, sort of pushed by the WBC. I am of the opinion that if Canelo wins, WBC will let Canelo do whatever he wants. If Mbili wins, the WBC will enforce Mbili and Leicester to fight again. So different rules will apply to different guys.
But you know how bad that would look? You know how bad that's going to look?
The WBC doesnn't mind looking bad, Coach. I mean, we already know that. But we'll see. That's basically what I'm predicting. I'd love to be wrong and everything work out and everything, be for the best. But either way, the a lot of positive things for the winner of this fight. This is a very, very important fight and a very big moment for both guys.
Well, you heard it here. It's huge implications for both guys. Whoever is to win, their futures are bright. But that's what we like here on Pro Box TV, because we get guys to fight when their back is against the wall and everything's on the line. And that's why we put on such good fights. So if you want to see a great fight, make sure you check it out. Oleksandr Martinez versus Emmanuel Aleem for the 168-pound interim WBC world title with huge implications for the future. You want to miss it. Pro Box TV live on YouTube. Don't want to miss it. And if you're in the area, I know it's hard to get a ticket. It did sell out about a week ago, but I do believe there's some extra walk-up tickets that are available. So make sure you check it out. And here's a little promo for get you guys ready for Oleksandr Martinez versus Emmanuel Aleem.
Saturday, March 21st, Pro Box TV invades the NOS Event Center as Oleksandr Martinez and Emmanuel Aleem battle for the WBC World Super Middleweight title. Palmdale's Joshua Kevin Anton battles the Uzbeki Punisher. Future Stars action will see LA's undefeated Sam Contreras going for 6 straight wins against Texas veteran Cesar Cantu.
What's up, everyone? Chris Algieri here with a very special edition of Pro Box TV Top Stories. We're on the road ahead of the Oleksandr Martinez versus Emmanuel Aleem huge showdown for the interim WBC 168-pound title. I'm here myself, Chris Algieri, of course. Paul Malignaggi is with me as well. And we are now joined by Thomas Ivers from BoxingScene Today. Tom, we got some big news. We got some things going on with, we were talking about a little bit yesterday about Anthony Joshua. He's been seen in gyms. He's been seen with Oleksandr Usyk. There was talks that a possibly next opponent could be Dillian Whyte, which there was mixed reviews. We were talking to the people that were live with us yesterday in the comment section. I mean, it really was mixed. People over here didn't really want to see it. So I'm not really sure what you're dealing with over there. But from what I understand, Matchroom has kind of pump the brakes on the thoughts of Dillian Whyte. What is the latest, and what are you hearing over there?
Yeah, so I spoke to Eddie Hearn earlier today just to kind of see how Joshua is, because he's back training, and he basically said he's only been in for 3 days, so it's very early just yet. He's going to go see him on Monday, I believe, and then I'm guessing that's when those conversations of a return date will start to be had. But he did mention that July is the kind of starting block of where they want to bring him back. Dillian Whyte, he shut that down completely. He said there's been absolutely zero talks. But he also did say, I'm not saying that it won't be him. So maybe that is someone they will look to get start discussions for. But as of yet, there's been absolutely no discussions for an opponent of Anthony Joshua.
Champ, I know we talked about this yesterday. We didn't love the idea of the Dillian Whyte fight. And 3 days, it's just the idea that everyone's so excited because it's Anthony Joshua and they see him back in the gym and he hits social media, and that's just the world that we live in. We jump in the gun a little bit.
Yeah. I think, rumors start to swirl right away. Just a guy coming back in the gym after maybe, you don't know where he's going to wind up. Just him being back in the gym automatically starts the rumor mill. And right away, the names of possible opponents start to get thrown out, thrown around. I think one of the points I made on yesterday's show is sometimes promoters themselves will test out a rumor, will start a rumor just to test out the temperature in the room about what kind of if this opponent is viable. I guess the temperature in the room about the Whyte fight didn't get the response that they wanted, so maybe they'll be looking for another opponent. I think it's a situation where you don't want to go too dangerous. I know some of the fans in the comment section yesterday were bringing up some possible names and some opponents, but those were a little bit, I thought, ahead of the pace of what Josh was looking for. While Dillian Whyte, we all agreed on, was probably a little bit too far behind the pace we're looking for. I mentioned guys like David Price and Dave Allen, as opposed to Joe Joyce's of the world and Philip Ergovich's of the world. Not that I wouldn't want to see those fights, but I think Josh was looking for more of a soft touch for a reentry. Because he's just looking to get to the Fury fight. We're just trying to get these guys in the ring with one another. So you don't want to try to not get them knocked off in the process. And so the end goal is for Fury to beat Makhmudov and Joshua to win this fight against whoever he winds up against, so that the Fury and Joshua fight can happen, and the UK scene will get what they want.
Tom, let me ask you this. I mean, are we getting ahead of our skis here? Again, we're getting very excited because Anthony Joshua is back in the gym. He was riding super high after that Jake Paul knockout, got a lot of attention over here in the States. It was beloved over here. And then obviously tragedy hit, and there was big question of whether he was going to come back or not. Are we getting ahead of ourselves, or does this really look like? I know you mentioned the possible date could be July, and are we putting too much stress on them and Joshua at this point?
Yeah, it's a good question because there's a piece on Boxing Scene at the moment by Elliot Wursel, and it's basically saying maybe it's time we all just leave Anthony Joshua alone just for a bit, just to make his mind up himself. And I suppose it is a good point because after everything he's been through, he won't even know. He might get into his first spar and realize, do I really want this anymore, kind of thing, after he's been through, and that would be perfectly fine, and he could walk away a happy man with a fantastic career. So maybe we should all just, kind of back off a little bit and let him work out if it's what he wants to do or not. But from everything that Eddie said, and from the social media posts, and from how people understand Joshua goes about his life, he absolutely lives and breathes boxing. And then I do expect him to come back. And if Eddie's saying the summer already, I presume that will be the targeted date. He's never out of shape, AJ, so I can't imagine that he needs a very big camp to kind of get going. And July's still, what, 3-4 months away.
Yeah, and to that point, like we've seen fighters who have retired in training camp getting ready for fights. I think of Vitaly Klitschko. I think of Andre Ward. I remember having a long discussion with Andre about that, where I believe he had just signed like a big HBO deal, and he was going to the gym, and he was just like, "Nah, I don't want to do this anymore. It's past me." So yeah, I think maybe pumping the brakes on us, but it's we get excited because it's AJ, and AJ's such a
I
massive
heard
part
that
of the
about
sport.
Klitschko too. Remember,
Yeah.
Klitschko also was talking about possibly coming back, and then he was back in the gym, but then it just never materialized.
I think it was they both did actually. I think it was Vitaly and Vladimir both
Yeah,
retired with the
yeah.
idea of coming back, and then
Sometimes you start working out
injuries.
and you get hurt. You're like, I'm too old for this. My body
That's
just.
how I retired.
Yeah.
I was 100% going to come back after the Ben fight, and I couldn't get through a training camp. I kept getting injured, and I was like, you know what? I want to go live a regular life where I don't have to worry about my body falling apart and having permanent injury. But in terms of what's the talk of this being with Usyk? You're seeing Joshua and Usyk. Of course, we live in a social media world, and like everything that happens, like you said, he's been back 3 days. But at least one of those days was spent swinging kettlebells with Oleksandr Usyk. So what's the talk of the town about that, and what are people saying?
Yeah, so he was in Usyk's with his one of his training team for the Jake Paul fight. That was the first camp with that team. But I don't think Usyk was involved too much because he didn't have a fight at the time. But obviously, they're both coinciding quite well. Usyk's training for Verhoeven, and Joshua is training for somebody, hopefully. But yeah, I think it's quite. I think people enjoy seeing it because over here, Usyk is just. He's a superstar after all the Brits he's beat, and I think it's quite nice to see them together because there was a lot of respect when they fought twice. I think they've always held each other in high esteem. I think until the Fury fight, I'm pretty sure Usyk had Joshua as his toughest fight, the rematch, and I think it was a split decision, the second one as well.
Yeah,
He
they
did
were
come
both
close.
close. They were both close.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's nice to see them together, and it's nice to see Joshua with a smile on his face too.
Yeah, good point. I was gonna wait to the end of the show to mention this, but the comment section is going nuts. An American legend, martial artist, movie star Chuck Norris actually passed away today. So rest in peace, Chuck. You gave us so many great movies and really a pioneer in martial arts. I grew up
Missing in
watching
action.
guys like him. Yeah, I mean, so many great movies. But also, Paulie and I had a big conversation about him yesterday
Last night.
as a competitor. Literally last night, randomly, Paulie
Yep.
sends me some kind of interview, and I went into the whole history of Chuck Norris and battling the likes of Joe Louis and how karate competitions were such a big deal. 1967, Chuck Norris fought Joe Louis in Madison Square Garden. Think about
Joe
that,
Louis
a karate tournament.
was the guy who trained you.
I have a black belt in the Joe Louis system, and he was a full contact martial artist and a kickboxing world champion as well. Did a bunch of seminars with him when I was a child and a teenager. But yeah, just rip to Chuck Norris, man. R.I.P. One of the best to ever do it, and an absolute icon. So, but next this was an interesting one. This next topic, and John Fury and his relationship with Tyson. This came out of nowhere. We've been worried, we're trying to figure out where Tyson was going to train, how he was going to train, who's going to be his team. We heard that it was not going to be his father. He was not going to be involved in the camp, and then his father came out with some pretty aggressive talk about the rift between him and his son, and whether or not he should be fighting. Tom, what are your thoughts on this? What are you hearing? And give us some more details about that situation.
Yeah, I saw the interview yesterday, and it's never nice to see a father and son fall out. And he didn't hold back, John, in what he said. He basically said he's got a lot of yes men around him, and that his son should have retired after the Deontay Wilder fights. And he's never been the same. So it's interesting that he said that, because he's fought a lot since then, and he never brought it up heading into the Usyk fights. But it's just not nice to see a father and son fall out, really, and it has come to this.
For a moment there, I thought it was going to be like a Chris Eubank Jr. senior situation where it was kind of like playing up to the crowd, and then we're going to come out with this grand. But he said some things that were different, in terms of like, listen, saying that he's worried about his health. I mean, I know Chris Eubank Jr. said that as well, but saying he hasn't been the same in recent years, that made me think a little bit differently about this. And I don't know if I don't know John Fury, but I just tell by the way he seems like a real straight shooter. So for him to say these kind of things makes me think, yeah, this is real.
Champ, camp is not going good.
Well, I don't think he's in camp. I don't think they have had Tom. Am I correct in that? Hearing that they have not been training together, father and son, and he is out of the camp?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, Tyson's in Thailand training for this camp. So, still, they haven't revealed who his trainer is for this camp, so I'm not even sure who that is. I'm guessing it's just in one of the Thai gyms, and he's kind of training himself. And I'm guessing haven't got great sparring out there. I don't know if they've flown anyone over, but yeah, as far as I'm aware, John hasn't been involved at all in the training camp.
That's wild, because I mean Tyson's got to be a hard guy to find sparring for. He's a big man. He's high level. You need lots of rounds. You need lots of guys. I mean, to get 12 rounds out of heavyweights, you generally need to have a few of them, especially to deal with a guy like Tyson, regardless of the shape he's in. Champ, what do you make of that? The fact that he's kind of off on his own, training in Thailand of all places, and
does he have a trainer? I'm sure he has a trainer out there, right? It's Thailand. A lot of guys from the UK will go there. We've also seen some MMA and kickboxers obviously train in Thailand, right? I don't think this is Fury's first foray in Thailand. I assume he's got a team. He would have probably have to bring heavyweights to spar with out there, right? He would have probably had to fly them in, because then I'm not sure you get those kind of guys in Thailand. But yeah, I mean, it's not the first training camp that I've heard about in Thailand. As far as his father not being involved, John Fury's a straight shooter, but sometimes I do think they play the media a little bit. They play around with the viral moments in the media game a little bit. Well, it could be also, a little bit.
But Champ, he said things like, says his son has been done since the Wilder fights. His legs have gone, and he should not return. He says he has a bunch of yes men around him who only want to fight so they can earn money. John said he's never taken any money from his son and only cares about his health. Now, April 11th is around the corner.
I mean, it's genuine, but then again, you're fighting Makhmudov. It's not like you're fighting, you're not fighting, prime Mike Tyson here. I don't know. Listen, he's saying the right things. Certainly a discussion point that we're talking about, but I don't know. Unless you're in camp to where you may be seeing that Tyson doesn't look good or something. He didn't bring up anything about the Ngannou thing, right? Because if anything, if you were worried like that, you would probably bring up the Ngannou thing. We're like, oh, he didn't look good against Ngannou. He got dropped, this and that. But that wasn't brought up. He just said, he hasn't been the same since the Wilder fights, right? I don't know.
He's since the Wilder fights, and he's worried about him at 37.
Since the Wilder fights, he's had some good performances too. I mean, didn't he knock out Dillian Whyte in emphatic fashion after Wilder?
Beautiful uppercut.
The Usyk fights were competitive. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
What do the comment section say?
The fight is April 11th. Well, Matt Borgensen came in with a little bit of a joke here. He goes, we all know why Fury is in Thailand. Come on now. I guess that's in reference to the other things you do outside of training in Thailand. I don't know. I've never been. But yeah, not a whole lot on this. There are some talks about some interesting names. A guy like for Joshua from our last discussion point, Brandon Moore or Kubrat Pulev for an AJ return. Pulev already fought. Didn't they already fight Joshua?
Yeah, Joshua knocked him out.
Then again, so did Whyte.
It was a little tough fight though. Pulev was I'm not. I'm thinking of the wrong fight.
That was the Klitschko fight. Pulev fought tough against Klitschko, but still got knocked out.
That's what it was. Yes. I don't know if we need to dig up any guys. I think that's kind of the issue with Dillian Whyte. It's like we've already seen it. We don't want to go backwards. Just so it just looks too much like it's just an easy fight. But yeah, they're cheap beer and cheap women. That's what I'm about Thailand. Again, I haven't been. I hear it's very nice and beautiful. But listen, April 11th is close. And Champ, you mentioned he's not fighting prime Mike Tyson, but a win here. Are we looking at a Joshua fight down the line?
It's one of those things where you got to get Joshua and Fury to that finish line to where they can fight each other. I think that's just these things are all about both guys. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's about both guys with that. I don't think it's about the current fight. I think the current fight is almost a foregone conclusion that they're supposed to win. So AJ will probably get an opponent where the foregone conclusion where he's supposed to win. Fury's opponent, Makhmudov, foregone conclusion he's supposed to win. Granted, he's had this long layoff. And granted, even with AJ, you don't know where his mind is at after the tragedy that he went through after beating Jake Paul. But nonetheless, logic would tell you it's supposed to be a foregone conclusion that they get by the guys that they're going to fight, because you don't put that much of a risk in front of a head-to-head showdown that's going to make a lot of money and be a big promotion, wherein like Fury and Joshua will be.
15-month layoff, fights around the corner, doesn't have a team. I don't know. There's a lot of variables that I agree with you. I don't think I actually like that Makhmudov comeback fight, because I do think it's a super winnable fight, but it's not looking very good, and the fight's right around the corner. Tom, what's the talk of that fight? Is it what Paulie's saying? Like, yeah, this is just a fight to get him back in the running, so we can get to essentially the Joshua Fury fight, which I think there's still a lot of interested parties involved. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think the reason we haven't heard about Tyson's team, etc., is because it should be a straightforward fight. If it's the Tyson Fury of old, he should quite easily handle Makhmudov. But at this point in his career, there are a few question marks, and Makhmudov's coming off a nice win over Dave Allen. I know Dave Allen's not Tyson Fury, so hopefully this answers a lot of questions about where Tyson Fury is. And people are looking forward to it, just because it's Tyson Fury. He's a huge player in the sport. We miss those characters in Great Britain. We don't have a lot of stars coming through, so it's great to see him back. But again, we just don't know what version of Tyson we'll get. And at 37 years old, he's been in some wars, and like his dad said, those fights with Wilder, have they maybe taken something from him? And how much does his dad know? Yeah,
I think it took away from both of them. I don't
think
Wilder,
exactly.
Deontay has not looked good since then. at all. And Fury, although he's had some good performances, he's not probably quite the same guy. I think all of us, especially in tough 12-round fights, leave a piece of ourselves in there, and we only have so many pieces to give. But what if Tyson is a little bit, beyond or over his prime? Does this make this fight more entertaining? Because Tyson's entertaining as hell. Like he's a very fun fighter to watch.
He's not
got
at
a very
his best. Even he's
yeah.
He's really supposed to lose to Makhmudov? I don't know.
I'm not saying he loses, but is the fight more entertaining? Do we get it instead of a blowout? Because really, do we want to see the Netflix main event and Tyson just go out there and smash Makhmudov? Because I think the best version of Tyson would do that 100 out of 100 times. But is it a little bit degraded Tyson make this a more entertaining fight? Is it a Tyson who hasn't fought in as many months as he has? I think 15-month layoff. Does he come back a little rusty and the beginning of the fight's actually good?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the mindset of Makhmudov as well. When the bell rings, what kind of Makhmudov are we gonna get? Makhmudov himself is for as tough as he looks, he looks the part. He looks like a Bond villain.
Looks like a bad guy in a movie. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's kind of soft, and when he's got to take it, he's not. He doesn't take it very well himself, despite the fact that he looks like he's run at you. And
Matt Borgensen has an interesting super chat here. We arguably saw one of the worst championship performances in history when Fury fought Ngannou. Makhmudov has a very solid shot at beating Fury.
I mean,
Strong
it's
words.
a talking point, but I don't think that was a Fury that was focused. I mean, at this point, I do think Fury's going to be focused. I think all this talk is because why would you come back after 15 months if you're not focused? I mean, you've had 15 months already. Logic would tell you, okay, you wouldn't come back, otherwise you'll come back focused. As opposed to with Ngannou, you're in the middle of camps, and then you go into another camp, and then you go into another camp. You maybe run into a situation where you're not focused the same way. It happens to these Western fighters. But after 15 months, why would you just come back and still not be focused? You just don't come back. It's a free country.
Surprisingly, comments are split.
What Jake O'Mara's trainer told him. Remember in Raging Bull? It's a free country. Don't fight anymore. It's you're not going to be focused. You don't have to fight anymore. So I think,
but that's the point of John Fury that he was making. He's like, he's got these guys trying to bleed him dry. There's people around him that are yes men telling him his money to be made.
John Fury is playing the role of Jake O'Mara's trainer in that scene when he says the free country don't fight anymore, and he's crying and telling him, and then they're both crying together. I don't know. I think Fury's focused.
But I'll tell you this though, the comment section is split. There's people that are agreeing with you, Paul. No, Fury's going to walk right through him. He's going to smash him. But there's a number of people, a substantial amount of people that are picking Makhmudov. Yeah, or that Tyson's going to pull out.
I'll bet Fury's, you all kinds of farmland that Tyson's going to knock on.
Fury's legs are gone. Makhmudov can get the upset. Matt Borgensen obviously told us his thought.
Nah. No. A little better line yourselves. No.
Even Cocaine Fury beats him. That's
a good one. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you've seen Makhmudov fight, I don't think he's that much to worry about. His bark is worse than his bite.
Yeah. So is his look. I mean, he looks very intimidating.
He looks. That's what I meant about his bark.
It's like my female pit bull. She looks real tough. She sounds real tough.
001 says so. Bet the house, Paulie. You know what? I might. I will have some meatloaf. I got the Hard Rock Casino down the street. I might go over there and do something.
Tom, what are you thinking? Do you thinking this could be an entertaining fight, or is this really just kind of a walkover? Because listen, everyone's looking for Joshua Fury, right? That's where all directions are pointing. No.
Yeah, I think almost if it is a bit more competitive against Makhmudov, it almost makes the Joshua fight more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think at current, people will probably be backing, if it's the Tyson Fury against Usyk or the Tyson Fury of old, they'll be like, I think he probably deals with Joshua. But I don't know, if he gets knocked down against Makhmudov or something like that, and maybe the Joshua fight becomes more competitive. They might not be in their primes, but it's definitely more interesting, I think. I do think Tyson has a habit of touching the canvas. So if he's a bit, off it and he's a bit rusty, Makhmudov can punch. So there is a chance of it, I suppose.
Guys,
that's what I was thinking.
I gotta address Boxing Stokes Eve 9131 says Paulie, we all know you're in the same hotel. Good observation, Chief. What was your first clue? The fact that we are in the same hotel,
or the fact that I said that we're on location. I don't know. Great
we're not
point.
in the same room, but we're in the same hotel. Yes.
Thanks.
A great observation by Boxing Stokes Eve.
So
Good job.
we got one more topic to discuss today. So it's the anniversary. I'm sorry, it's the 48th birthday of Antonio Margarito this week. And fans are remembering him and his legacy. And obviously, I think most people kind of think of the loaded glove situation, even though he was a very good fighter and champion prior to that. What Tom? Let me ask you, what is the legacy of Antonio Margarito in terms of what he's going to go down in history as?
Well, I was a little bit young when Margarito was coming through, so I only watched his highlights kind of, but
Mm.
just the first thing I ever remember of Margarito was the Cotto fight. So I suppose that's what stands out to people. So I obviously he wasn't caught during the first fight. Well, he was never proven either if he was cheating. It was the Mosley fight, I believe he got caught, wasn't it? And people
Yeah.
pointed the finger.
So for people who maybe are young like yourself who don't remember it, I'm going to give a little background. So in January 2009, boxer Antonio Margarito was caught with illegal plaster-like inserts in his hand wraps before his fight against Shane Mosley. I believe it was Nazim Richardson who caught him,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
who was also responsible for making Trinidad rewrap his hands in the Hopkins fight.
Right. So then Shane goes out there and absolutely decimates Margarito. And this was after Margarito. And Shane was like on the back nine at this point. He was kind of thought of being out of the top contention, and he blows out Margarito. And this is on the tail of Margarito beating up and stopping Cotto in, I mean, violent fashion. And Cotto in that first fight, eyes were swollen both sides, bleeding from the nose, got dropped multiple times, which is very, very rare in Cotto to see with Cotto up until that point. Cotto's first loss, and it was a big grudge match, Puerto Rico versus Mexico. So then after that, he gets caught by Nazim. Shane knocks him out viciously, and that becomes a huge point of contention. Obviously, Cotto goes, well, you got to assume, granted, he wasn't caught. You could never say that he was actually using the loaded wraps the first time. But there's always the talking point. You never get caught the first time, right? So was he using loaded gloves for the parts of his career or any other of those major fights?
And the Cotto fight was the one he was just coming off of, right? So.
Yes, I don't know if it was directly afterwards, but he was
was
blasting out some good fighters like Kermit Cintrone. He had stopped Sergio
Matt
Martinez
said
very
I
early
have
on.
to eat crow. Matt Borges said I have to eat crow and shave my head if Fury loses. By the way, just
We've eaten a lot of crow on our show, so it's
yeah.
we got plenty around.
And Jimmy has to shave my head.
Yeah. But Tom, so sorry to cut you off. I just want to give a little background for the people who are tuning in who maybe don't remember that. But what was your take on that whole situation? And now that you're a boxing pundit and someone involved in the sport, and of course you've done your research, what are your thoughts now?
Yeah, I remember when I first watched it as a kid, and I remember the first time I was kind of watching Koto's career, and this was a big kind of moment in the career, and I had a real resentfulness towards Margarito for kind of that whole incident. And then I remember watching the fight where he finally got his revenge in 2011, I believe, when he boxed Margarito, and Margarito got pulled out with a eye injury, I think it was, wasn't it? So yeah, that's how I remember the whole period. And apart from that, I struggle to kind of pinpoint any big. I know Margarito was in some huge fights, but that was always the thing that stands out when I think people look back to Margarito, which is why on his 48th birthday, nobody's celebrating the amazing fights he had. It's just the hand wraps incident. So I think it's kind of tarnished his legacy in a way. And I mean, maybe it should be like that. If you do bad things in sports, like take peds, that's kind of what you should be
Mhm.
remembered for.
I mean, he fought Pacquiao, he fought Cotto, he fought Kermit Cintrone, he fought Paul Williams, Sergio Martinez. I mean, that's a who's who list of guys, but yeah, it does seem like he's more known for that vile thing that he did or his team did. But it's hard to go past that. Now, Paulie, I know you probably have a bunch to say about this. Being a former opponent of Miguel Cotto, I was a former opponent of Manny Pacquiao, who destroyed Margarito, blasted his eye out. And I even remember training in Robert Garcia's camp that Margarito came in prior to the Miguel Cotto rematch, and his eye was a mess. And they were thinking that the fight might not get passed. And I believe, what was it? New York wouldn't allow it, champ.
New York allowed it. The
Oh,
rematch.
Vegas.
York, yeah.
Someone wouldn't allow it. I remember that was one of the issues. Oh yeah, New York actually did allow it, which is very strange. But it wasn't allowed to happen somewhere else because of his eye. But then New York actually did allow it, and then Cotto went out there and smashed him to get a quote unquote revenge.
Yeah,
But Paulie, what is your take on all this?
My take is that, I mean, it's a hard thing to not remember. It was a big deal. It's a big deal. I do find it strange though how people will sort of just forget people that fail for PEDs, but there's something like this because I guess it's not as common as PEDs. It's almost like the PEDs have become so common that people just overlook them after 6 months, after a year. I don't see guys who fail for PEDs being talked about in the way Margarito is for the hand wrap situation, where it's constantly brought up anytime his name is brought up. You don't see anybody who failed for PEDs constantly being brought up. And I'm not defending it or anything. I think what's wrong is wrong. But what I'm saying is keep up the same energy when guys fail for PEDs. It's because it's the same, if not even worse. Okay.
Yeah, you're still going in with a weapon that isn't yours, and that's why PEDs should be really stressed more. And I agree with you, champ. But I'm going to give Dr. Boxing Talk a shout out real quick. I know, but listen. I mentioned 3/4 of those guys before you even said anything. But yes, I'm giving you a shout out for the list. Yeah, so that's I think that's ultimately
what by the way. Somebody wrote that too in the comment section. Margarito also.
Yeah. I mean, not Claudio was a very good fighter, but I think maybe not profile as big as some of those other guys. But he had a long, illustrious career. Just a violent guy in terms of style. Big, long, strong, heavy-handed body shots. Relentless. Never got tired. Very, very durable. Was a fun fighter to watch. I know we're only talking about the hand wraps at this point, but Margarito was a fun guy to watch. He blew out Cintron like so easily. I remember.
Yeah.
And Cintron was a pretty tough guy.
Yep. But again, that was another one where it could be the hand wraps too,
That's the thing, even with PEDs, right? So again, I always say you never get caught the first time. So do you get an asterisk for every good performance prior to you getting caught? Because it's always going to be in question. And Cotto can't say that for sure that his hands were loaded, but we're always going to have a question mark. And a lot of times that's enough for people to
182 gave us a nice super chat, champ. But he's asking me the difference in defense with bare knuckle and professional boxing.
Okay, out of left field, but that's one for you.
Out of left field, but it's a good super chat, so we got to answer him. Thanks, Blink 182. Mostly it's you can't do the guard like this. It's a much more difficult to do this kind of guard in bare knuckle. Shots can get through. You can do it, but it's a lot more difficult to catch and shoot off this kind of guard. Also, you want to slip more and slide more, make guys completely miss. When you catch shots, I prefer to do it a little higher. If you do that in boxing, you're gonna hit with a body shot. The body punching is not as adept in bare knuckle. They're not as good at body punchers, so you can lift up your guard higher, kind of catch the bare hand more here as opposed to here where it may get through. I mean, again, you can catch this way as well. The boxing is definitely an advantage in there. And a lot of your defense in boxing will translate to bare knuckle, especially if you're your boxing style in general will translate to bare knuckle. If you are a boxer where you strategize on being first, I think a boxer who's counter punches too much won't have an advantage in bare knuckle. But if you're a boxer who's first and use those boxing techniques being first, I think you can use that. A lot of the defense is also similar. There's parrying, there's again catching, but I for me slipping is important. You have to be able to slip, and you do see the punches better because those guys aren't as good at boxers, so you can slip and slide away from shots a little bit more easier.
Yeah. And for you guys out there, Paulie told me that I would be very good at it, and I said I'm absolutely not doing it. I'm not breaking my hands anymore. Because I was a fighter. I fought at long range. I didn't get hit much. Yeah. So and
if you focus on being first at range, it'll give you a lot of control. But your hands hurt a lot, hands hurt a lot.
I told him, I was like, I wouldn't be worried about my face. I'm worried about my hands. I'm 42 years old. I don't want to.
I find it to be more painful on my hands than my face. I find it, the cuts are more common and bruising is more common because
and you also don't get hit as much.
You don't get hit as much,
but much less contact.
Like razor blades when it's bare knuckle, so you get cut more, but it doesn't hurt as much because boxers we're used to being bruised and cut. But your hands hurting like that is it's agonizing, man. It's really, really that's for me is the most difficult thing.
And Tom, you had some fights, correct?
Yeah, I was an amateur. I had about 30. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. So you fought. Did you have any hand problems? Was that ever something that came up?
Yeah, my right hand is never really it's a good thing we're not real writers. We just use keyboards because my right hand's a mess.
Yeah, that's a part of it that a lot of people don't. I don't think they hear about it, but I don't think they understand how prevalent it is. We do hurt our hands a lot, even with all the tape and the heavy gloves and different things. But it's very common. Hands are not made to punch. As much
what
as
is
we
this
do.
thing in the comments section that's being talked about where they keep talking about if Ben is not, if Zuffa is not the official promoter of Ben's next fight, Eddie can sue. There's been several comments made about this. What's going on? Is Zuffa like not?
Tom, do you know anything about that?
Yeah. He brought this up earlier at the press conference I was at. Basically, I think Matchroom had a right to match the offer made by Zuffa, and because the offer was absolutely ridiculous, they couldn't match it. But I think in that contract was that the next fight had to be promoted by Zuffa Boxing, and as it stands, it's Spencer Brown, Tyson Fury's promoter, who will be the lead promoter of the event in the UK. Wow. So I think Matchroom are trying to say, well, it's not the offer that we were said that we had to match. So I think there's a legal dispute going on there. I don't really know, and obviously they're not going to say too much. I think that's one for the lawyers kind of thing. But yeah, I think they're definitely pursuing.
Does it threaten the Ben Prograis fight now or no?
I don't think it'll threaten it, but I think it'll be more that Zuffa will have to pay out to Matchroom depending on the situation. Yeah.
It does seem like a lot of the old guard promoters are seeming to get litigious and looking for reasons to kind of try and sap what Zuffa is doing. But that's just it's lawfare, right? This is battle.
If you have a right
everything's
to match,
fair in love and war.
That is interesting though, because think about this, if you have the right to match, right, and then you didn't match, but then that wasn't an offer that Zuffa was actually making, right? If Zuffa didn't actually grab him, then does Ben technically still belong to you? I mean, how does that come into play? Because you never got your chance to match, even though by contract you're allowed to match, right?
Yeah, he was a free agent, so I think he'll be okay in terms of boxing with elsewhere. So he was technically not a Matchroom fighter, but it was the same with the Bam Rodriguez situation. They actually matched the offer from Zuffa because Bam was a free agent.
We got another super chat. Martin Quadrado 5478. Any news on Dural Valsain or Nico Flas? Valsain is still with us, I think. But it may be a co-promotional deal or something going on there. I don't know what the deal is there. With Flas, I haven't heard after the Tiger Johnson loss. I would love to see Nico Flas back. He was really one of my favorite fighters. I thought he was hard done by with that matchup with Tiger Johnson. That was a tough fight to have to take, especially he was on the verge of getting maybe a title fight.
But he just ran into a stud. That was tougher.
And that's the thing. Blast performance, but with Blast though, what's the update on Blast? I know he's around. I saw him.
From what I understand, I know Matchroom was interested. They were looking at him, because he is a top flight guy. He's a true blue chip prospect, and he's got a lot of upside. He's big for 154. He's very talented. He can punch.
Pro going on over there? What happened with Blast?
I mean, listen, anything's a possibility. One thing we know about Gary Jonas, the CEO of Pro Box TV, is he's very open to his fighters making as much money as possible. He doesn't like to take out of guys' pockets, so it's very much a possibility. But we do have an abbreviated show today.
Blink 182, hold on. Blink 182 gave us another super chat. He said, "Thank you, Paulie. I know you're not a trainer, but you got a better delivery on teaching than a lot of them." I thank you, Blink 182. We got to read those super chats.
Thank you guys for your super chats. It helps. It's fun. You guys make this job a lot easier. But Tom, thank you so much for joining me, giving us your insight and elucidating some of those topics that are going on out there. Appreciate you. And now everyone knows you were a fighter. So now you're getting some love in the chats too. People are giving you some love. So that's a good thing. But listen, guys, thanks you so much for tuning into Pro Box TV's top stories. Make sure you check out Lester Martinez versus Emmanuel Aleem. We got the WBC interim 168-pound title on the line with big implications for the winner. That is tomorrow night. Check it out live on Pro Box TV YouTube.
Saturday, March 21st, Pro Box TV invades the NOS Event Center as Lester Martinez and Emmanuel Aleem battle for the WBC World Super Middleweight title. Palmdale's Joshua Kevin Anton battles the Uzbeki Punisher. Future Stars action will see LA's undefeated Sam Contreras going for 6 straight wins against Texas veteran Cesar Cantu.